Were you involved in a racist party?
No, we're not a racist country, Brian.
I was a brown.
If you do a plain reading on our Constitution, there is a 3/5 clause for representation in slave states. What was the slavery based on? Was it based on race? I think it was. From 1861 to 1865, there was a civil war. The one that she couldn't figure out what the cause was, I can tell you what the cause was. The cause was slavery. 11 Confederate states, on each one of those constitutions in those states, in that loose confederacy, was the line that slavery shall be forever. At the African American was lesser and not equal to white men. Now, this bloody apocalypse lasted for over 4 years, and over 700,000 Americans died. At the end of the Civil War, the South was defeated, and General Lee surrendered at Appomattox to General Grant. The same people who had started the insurrection, and the reason why we have the 14th Amendment, decided they wanted to come back and continue to run like it was nothing had happened at all. That's the reason for the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which are collectively known as the Civil Rights Amendments to historians. The 14th Amendment was there because they did not want those men who were involved with the Confederacy, who had led an insurrection, key phrase, to be involved in politics. And then, from 1865 to 1877, there was a period of Reconstruction. From 1867 to 1877, it was called Radical Reconstruction, when there was an actual chance for African Americans to vote. For example, the founders of the Texas Republican Party were all African American men, ironically. And while this is going on, the Republican Party was backing big labor and squelching those movements. And it doesn't happen, the labor movement doesn't happen and end positively until Labor Day, and Theodore Roosevelt, who was a decent Republican, who was really a liberal. Anyway, back onto slavery and racism in the United States. After 1877, poll taxes, grandfather clause, loitering, anything that was done humanly possible to suppress black votes, lynching, killings, burning of churches, to the point where the Ku Klux Klan actually marched down Pennsylvania Avenue while Woodrow Wilson was president. Racism was abundantly clear in our immigration policy. We wouldn't let the Chinese Exclusionary Act. Gee, what made them different from the Irish? I could tell you one thing, it wasn't because they were Catholic. And then, when it came to conflict, in World War I, African Americans were generally not allowed to participate in conflict. They were used as stevedores, which are people who move things. And again, in World War II, and the time in between, African Americans were slowly trying to increase their rights unsuccessfully. World War II occurs. There's a double V. V for victory at home, V for victory against fascism abroad. And then there's a rapid change. Rapid as opposed to the hundreds of years of servitude African Americans had prior to that point. In 1947, Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier, playing for the New York Dodgers. In 1948, Harry Truman desegregates the military. And in 1950 and 1953, blacks and whites fought together to save democracy, quote unquote, in Korea. Brown versus the Board of Education happens. You have the rise of Martin Luther King in Selma, and you have the sit-ins and the marches and the Selma marches, and you get to see racism on television as white cops attack peaceful African Americans as they protest Jim Crow laws. You have the Greensboro Four sitting down in the Woolworths, making sure that they will, because they were not allowed to be seated. And then you have, in rapid succession, JFK is elected president with Lyndon Baines Johnson as his vice president, which was very, very fortunate for democracy. Everyone owed Lyndon Baines Johnson favors, and he was able to get a lot accomplished when he became president after someone shot JFK. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of '64, and Medicaid were all brought to you by the Great Society. And these were all efforts to try and fight the racism that happened in our society. LBJ's hero was FDR. And then you also had the rise of the Black Panthers and militant African Americans to try and control what was going on in their neighborhoods. Racism is a part of American history. If you deny that, you are denying reality. And there's still racism today, because I live in Florida, and there were white nationalists marching throughout our state all the time. And we had a white nationalist trying to successfully kill black people last year in Jacksonville. So please don't tell me racism doesn't exist. This is also a consequence of education being underfunded last year by $140 billion by people like Nikki Haley. Ignorance of our past makes us doomed to repeat it in the future. Please remember, education is a golden ticket, and we should support education the way we support our military contractors, lavishly. Vote true and vote blue.